So today we are going to discuss another 5 questions from public finance section, and we'll be concluding this section today. So I have taken few new questions for the day 21 question. The first is explain how efficiency condition for provision of public good differ from that of private good. What is the efficiency condition for private good and how it is different from the public good? So how the efficiency condition for provision of public good is different from the private good? See, the answer to this question depend upon, you can take a partial equilibrium view, you can take a general equilibrium view, although preferably you have to take the general equilibrium view. So because we are talking about the efficiency condition, that is Pareto efficiency condition. So usually the Pareto efficiency condition is applied in the context of general equilibrium. So using that, I will be explaining the general equilibrium condition, although I will specify what will be the partial equilibrium condition. Partial means if we discuss only private good, then what is the outcome? And if we discuss private and public good both, then what will be the outcome? That means if one good is private, other is public, then what will be the outcome? So first question is efficiency condition for the public good. Second is explain the decentralization theorem in the context of welfare gain from multiple fiscal unit, and how do individuals vote by their feet, that is popularly known as the Taibu hypothesis. So this is again not asked either in the economic service or in the civil service, but expect a question because regularly these questions are coming at the undergraduate level. So decentralization theorem, although decentralization theorem can be asked, but I don't think they will go and stretch forward to the Taibu hypothesis. But just since we have allocated 1 week for this money banking and finance section, so naturally we have to consider some new questions. Third is explain the effect of tax on the labor income, that is wage income, how labor income will affect the labor supply. Then compare proportional tax and progressive tax that has same effect on utility, and what are the canons of public expenditure. So we have done canon of taxation, this is canon of public expenditure. Start from the first. First is efficiency condition for provision of public good. When we discuss this question, efficiency for provision of public good, take the general equilibrium view. So if we consider that there are two commodities to be distributed between two persons, out of these two, if one is a public good and other is private good, तो अगर एक कमोडिटी पब्लिक है और एक कमोडिटी अगर प्राइवेट है, जस्ट बिकॉज वी आर डीलिंग विथ पब्लिक गुड, जनरल इनकम का जो मॉडल होता है 2x2x2 मॉडल, वेयर वी डिस्कस दैट देयर आर टू फैक्टर ऑफ प्रोडक्शन, लेबर एंड कैपिटल, produces two commodity X and Y to be distributed between A and B. In that case, the marginal conditions of Pareto optimality require that first of all there has to be production efficiency. So production efficiency require MRTS for X is equal to MRTS for Y, जो quantity curve of production पे हो गया. From that quantity curve we have derived the production possibility curve. So every point on the PPF there will be production efficiency. Second, consumption efficiency के लिए MRS A equated to MRS B, that will be on the utility possibility frontier. And third is simultaneous, where MRS A equal to MRS B is equal to marginal rate of product transformation. ये कंडीशन जब आप लिखते हैं तो दिस इज फॉर द प्राइवेट कमोडिटी, यहाँ एक्स और वाई दोनों प्राइवेट कमोडिटीज है, बट नाउ वी आर डीलिंग विद अ केस वेयर वन इज प्राइवेट, अदर इज पब्लिक. So if one is private and the other is public, so what is the feature of public good? Public goods are basically characterized by non-rivalness. So if a quantity of public goods is provided, it is available for both. It cannot be more for one or less for the other. So public good is non-rival, but private good is rival. So private good का consumption अगर एक ने कर रखा, then amount of it available for the other person get reduced. So given that, we have to determine the efficiency condition. Naturally this condition will get modified now. We have to modify this condition. Now the way to explain this is first draw a production possibility frontier. On that production possibility frontier, on x-axis take public good, on vertical axis take private good. तो पीपीएफ का मतलब हो गया प्रोडक्शन की एफिशिएंसी हो गया एट एवरी पॉइंट. देन द सेकंड पार्ट, आई एम assuming that utility of person A remain constant. Person A utility remains same. So given the utility of person A, we have to maximize the utility of the other person. And this is the standard method or tool used when we explain it inside the Edgeworth box. That वन पर्सन की यूटिलिटी अगर हमने कांस्टेंट रखी है और सेकंड पर्सन की यूटिलिटी को अगर मैक्सिमाइज करते हैं, then that maximization will be determined by tangency, and tangency will determine the efficiency condition. So just apply that standard tool to explain this. Consider A's utility is same, we will maximize the utility of B. So if a production point, if I say that the production point is 1, production point 1 का मतलब हो गया amount of public good produced is G1 and amount of private good produced is this value. पब्लिक गुड का प्रोडक्शन ये है, प्राइवेट गुड का प्रोडक्शन ये, बट हमें पर्सन ए की यूटिलिटी को सेम रखना है. तो ए पर्सन एज यूटिलिटी विल रिमेन सेम along the same indifference curve. So if public good quantity produces G1, then that G1 is available to both A और B दोनों के लिए. तो सेकेंड पर्सन के लिए G1 की क्वांटिटी तो आ जाएगी, बट सिंस एंटायर क्वांटिटी प्रोड्यूस ऑफ प्राइवेट गुड इज कंज्यूम्ड बाय A, तो क्वांटिटी अवेलेबल फॉर द अदर पर्सन ऑफ प्राइवेट गुड विल रिड्यूस टू 0. उसके लिए 0 है. इफ आई टेक अनदर पॉइंट 2, पीपीएफ का पॉइंट 2 लेने का मतलब है quantity of public good produced is G2, but out of that that G2 will remain same for both, but A's indifference curve, A will remain on the same indifference curve. तो ये quantity तो दोनों के लिए सेम होनी है. सेकंड फर्स्ट पर्सन के लिए प्राइवेट गुड का कंजम्पशन ये हो जाएगा. तो फर्स्ट पर्सन इज नाउ कंज्यूमिंग दिस मच अमाउंट ऑफ प्राइवेट गुड, व्हिच मींस this gap is available for the second person, that is for B. So this gap you are plotting in fact here. पॉइंट 1 पे ये 0 रहना है, नेक्स्ट पॉइंट पे ये गैप आ जाएगा. वैसे थर्ड पॉइंट का मार्क करेंगे, फोर्थ पॉइंट एंड सो ऑन, and again it will reduce to 0 here. So if you plot it graphically, then it will be initially rising and reaches the maximum, then declining and reduces to 0. So what does this curve actually shows? It basically shows the quantity of private good that person B can consume so that utility of A remains same. I repeat, this curve actually shows quantity of private good, vertical axis पे private good है because public good तो same होना है. Quantity of private good that is available for person B so that utility of person A remain same. So given that constraint, पर्सन बी विल बी मैक्सिमाइजिंग हिज ओन यूटिलिटी. तो अब बी के लिए ड्रॉ कर रहे हैं. व्हेन यू ड्रॉ इट फॉर द बी, इट विल बी टेंजेंट समवेयर हियर. इट विल नेवर बी टेंजेंट एट द मैक्सिमम पॉइंट. रिमेंबर, मैक्सिमम पॉइंट पे टेंजेंट होने के लिए लाइन हॉरिजॉन्टल होनी चाहिए, बट इंडिफरेंस का नेगेटिव है, सो इट विल बी टेंजेंट ओनली एट द नेगेटिव स्लोप पार्ट ऑफ इट. नाउ दिस विल बी द कंडीशन. नाउ फ्रॉम हियर इफ आई राइट G star, extend it above. So production point is, let us say, 7. Quantity of private good consumed by second person is determined by 0.8. The gap 7 and 8 is represented basically here. You can mark this as a 0.9. So this is the point where efficiency condition is satisfied. But how we get that efficiency condition? Actually what we have done, फ्रॉम 0.7 वी हैव सब्ट्रैक्टेड 0.8 और जो गैप आ रहा है उस गैप को हमने यहाँ प्लॉट कर रखा है और दैट विल बी 0.9. तो स्लोप एट 0.7, तो स्लोप ऑफ पीपी F. Slope of PPF is MRPT minus slope at 0.8, but 0.8 is on the indifference curve. Indifference curve slope is MRS, and that gap is equated to this point, and this is the point of tangency where indifference curve of B is tangent, so it is equated to MRS B. Therefore, MRPT is equal to MRS A plus MRS B. MRPT is equal to MRS A plus MRB. The summation of MRS will be equated to the MRPT in the case of one commodity private and the other commodity public good. तो ये कंडीशन का मॉडिफिकेशन है एज कंपेयर टू दिस, बट ये जनरल इक्टर मॉडल है. अगर आप इसे पार्शियल इक्टर मॉडल में समझा रहे हैं, पार्शियल इक्टर मॉडल में सिंपल डिस्क्रिप्शन ही होता है दैट इन पार्शियल इक्टर वी विल डिटरमाइन, सपोज दिस इज डिमांड कर्व फॉर पर्सन ए, डिमांड कर्व फॉर पर्सन बी. Again, I will compare private with the public. Now, if it is for the private good, the private good may demand will be added horizontally. So, private it will be added horizontally. So, horizontal summation will be this. But if it is a public good, it will be added vertically. Vertical summation will be in this way. So given any marginal cost, if I consider a constant marginal cost, given any marginal cost, the efficiency condition will be determined by this point. So price equal to marginal cost हो जाएगा, but at that price A will buy different quantity, B will buy different quantity. That can happen because commodity is private. But point to note is that at the efficiency point, marginal benefit of A is equal to marginal benefit of B equal to marginal cost, and marginal benefit of A equal to marginal benefit of B, which is equal to the marginal cost. But public good में, for public good, it is the summation that will be equated. We will mark this point. This is the efficiency condition, and quantity will remain same for both person. But now we find that the marginal benefit of A determined by this point plus marginal benefit of B determined by this point. The summation of marginal benefit of A and marginal benefit of B is equal to marginal cost. ठीक है, तो हमेशा पब्लिक गुड में याद रखिएगा समेशन आ जाएगा. ऑल्दो क्वेश्चन का ये पार्ट नहीं था, बट इन केस अगर आप पार्शियल इक्विटी वहां मेंशन होगा, देन यू हैव टू अप्लाई दिस. नाउ मूव टू क्वेश्चन नंबर. ठीक है, फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन आपको इस फॉर्मेट में एक्सप्लेन है. यू कैन, ठीक है, वो मार्किंग है, उसको आप इग्नोर भी कर सकते हो. कंडीशन इज स्टेटेड है एंड देन यू हैव टू बेसिकली एक्सप्लेन दिस. क्लियर? This approach is basically associated with the summation. Now, second question is about the decentralization theorem and welfare gain from the multiple fiscal unit. What is the decentralization theorem and what are the multiple welfare gains from the multiple fiscal unit? So, the question is basically decentralization के advantages बताने हैं, और अगर हम सर्विसेज को, पब्लिक सर्विसेज को डिसेंट्रलाइज फॉर्मेट में प्रोवाइड करते हैं, देन व्हाट विल बी द गेन. And rather than providing it decentrally, if it has been provided in a central provision, that means rather than providing in a different quantity, if you provide a uniform quantity to all, centrally provided हो गया, then there will be some inefficiency loss. Gain if it is provided in a decentralized manner, loss if it is provided in a centralized manner. तो पब्लिक सर्विस का डिमांड अलग अलग सोसाइटी में या अलग अलग एरिया में डिफरेंट हो सकता है, डिफरेंट पर्सन के लिए भी डिफरेंट पॉसिबल है. तो इफ देयर आर, सपोज देयर आर टू डिफरेंट रीजन, इन दैट रीजन डिमांड फॉर पब्लिक गुड इज डिफरेंट फॉर ए एंड इट इज डिफरेंट फॉर बी. द मार्जिनल कॉस्ट ऑफ प्रोवाइडिंग दैट पब्लिक गुड इज सेम. So demand in A is more, demand in B is less. So naturally, if government should be allocating or providing more to area A and less to area B. But rather than doing it, if they provide it uniformly, so if there is a uniform provision, then in that case what will happen that area B के लिए वो quantity ज़्यादा होगी, area A के लिए वो quantity कम है. तो जब एरिया ए बी के लिए अगर वो क्वांटिटी ज्यादा है तो दिस एरिया इज रेफर्ड एज अ वेलफेयर लॉस. ये लॉस होगा व्हेन इट इज प्रोवाइडेड सेंट्रली. दिस विल बिकम एज अ गेन if it is provided decentrally. Why there will be a loss if it is provided centrally? See, in this area what we find that the demand curve is below and the cost curve is above. That means consumers are willing to pay less, the cost is more. So technically that quantity should not have been produced. मार्केट के एफिशिएंसी के लिए हमेशा रखेंगे. व्हाट इज रिक्वायर्ड इज इफ यू ड्रॉ एनी डिमांड कर्व एंड सप्लाई कर्व, then we say that intersection is the market quantity. But just think why not more or why not less? If supply curve is this and demand curve is this, the height of demand curve determine willingness to pay, height of supply curve determine the cost. Supply curve is marginal cost curve. So if the cost is more, demand curve का height यहाँ ज़्यादा है, cost of production less है. If consumer willingness to pay is more and seller cost is less, then that unit should have been provided because that is beneficial to both. Because if bargain करके अगर वो price in between भी set करते हैं, consumer will have surplus, producer will also have surplus. This gain will be realized till you reach this intersection point. Once you cross this point, then demand curve is below and supply curve is above. So that unit should not be provided. So actually quantity provided will be determined by the intersection of demand and supply. तो जहाँ पे डिमांड सप्लाई का इंटरसेक्शन है, तो नेचुरली अगर आप क्वांटिटी इससे कम प्रोवाइड करेंगे तो कम अगर प्रोविजन होगा तो ये एरिया डेड वेट लॉस में कन्वर्ट हो जाएगा, जैसे टैक्स में होता है या मोनोपोली में होता है. सेम इज हेयर ऑल्सो. सेंट्रली अगर प्रोवाइड करेंगे तो क्वांटिटी ज़्यादा हो रही है, decentrally provide करेंगे तो each area will get what they are basically preferring. So in that context you have to understand this diagram. So if it is provided in a centralized manner, then this area will be welfare loss and this area will be welfare loss. And if it is provided decentrally, in that case quantity provided to B will be this, quantity provided to A will be this, and these two area will turn out to be a वेलफेयर गेन. तो ये डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन थ्योरम बेसिकली एक्सप्लेन करना आपको इस फॉर्मेट में. द वेलफेयर गेन फ्रॉम डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन थ्योरम आर ऑफन कंसीडर्ड एज डेड वेट लॉस दैट रिजल्ट फ्रॉम सेंट्रलाइजेशन. सेंट्रलाइज करेंगे तो डेड वेट लॉस होगा, मतलब सेंट्रलाइज करने पे वो लॉस है, डिसेंट्रलाइज करेंगे तो वही एरिया गेन के कन्वर्ट हो जाता है. तो अज्यूम दैट पॉपुलेशन ऑफ अ स्टेट इज डिवाइडेड इनटू डिफरेंट लोकेलिटीज. A local public good is provided in each locality and it is assumed that marginal cost is constant and cost is shared equally by the resident. The demand function are different, so efficient quantity in locality A and locality will be different, as efficient quantity determined by equality of price and marginal cost. However, if public good is provided by a central fiscal authority at Q bar, then there will be welfare loss represented by the shaded area. बस वो एरिया तक बात उसको मार्क कर लेना. और जो वेलफेयर गेन और लॉस दैट विल डिपेंड अपॉन वेरियस फैक्टर्स लाइक ग्रेटर विल बी द इलास्टिसिटी. अगर आप इस डिमांड कर्व को फर्दर स्टीपर करते जाएं तो ये एरिया इनफैक्ट और बढ़ता जाएगा. तो जब आप जो वेलफेयर लॉस का पार्ट होगा दैट डिपेंड अपॉन सर्टेन थिंग्स. इफ वेटेज ऑफ क्वेश्चन इज मोर यू कैन एलाबोरेट दैट. It is evident that greater will be the difference in taste and preference, greater will be the welfare loss. मतलब wide variation है A और B के डिमांड कर्व में, then there will be more and more loss if goods are provided centrally. Dead weight loss also depend upon price elasticity demand. So you can add on these points. And second part basically इस क्वेश्चन के अंदर है how people vote by their feet. Voting by their feet means you move from one area to the other area because fiscal migration is allowed. So like in India, there are different states. You can move from one state to the other state. Now question is, in which state person will prefer to move? Typo hypothesis say that we will select that state according to our preference. We will choose that state which will be providing that type of public good more which is required by me. And for that purpose, they are charging lower tax. That means I will go for that state where according to my preference public goods are provided, and the tax for that public good is basically less. So that is basically the idea of Taibo hypothesis. Because public good की category भी अलग अलग है. Schooling could be, education could be, schooling हो गया, hospitals हो गए, law and order हो गया, administration है. So there are different type of public good provided, and each person will have different preferences for those public services. So Taibo argued that individuals select local community whose provision of local public good and tax satisfy their preference. So just one liner वो याद रखनी. In case अगर ये question आता है तो वो line आपको upfront लिख देना. Taibo analysis was a direct response to the Samuelson conclusion that individuals would not reveal their preference for public good. Public good का एक problem है कि people will not reveal their preference, but Taibo कह रहा है कि we reveal our preference by moving from one region to the other region, and in which region I will move according to the preference for the local public good and the tax price. But Taibo argued that in the local community context, individual will reveal their preference by moving to locality that reflect their taste and preference and offer preferred tax benefit mix. अब इस concept को explain अगर करना है तो explain करने के लिए we have taken three. Suppose person A or locality A, locality B. We can have locality A, locality B, लोकेलिटी सी. मान के चलने की लोकेलिटी बी का जो प्रेफरेंस है वो पूरे सोसाइटी का प्रेफरेंस को रिप्रेजेंट भी कर रहा है, बट ए और सी का प्रेफरेंस जो कॉमन क्वांटिटी है उससे डिवाइड कर रहा है. बट बी को जो क्वांटिटी मिल रहा है, बी इज बेसिकली सेटिस्फाइड विद दैट यूनिफॉर्म एलोकेशन. सो पर्सन ए, बी एंड सी, इन तीनों का अलग अलग डिमांड है. इन तीनों के अलग अलग डिमांड को ऐड करके अपने मार्केट का डिमांड निकाल रखा है. और सिंस पब्लिक गुड है तो पब्लिक गुड में जो समेशन होगा दैट विल बी इक्वेटेड टू द कॉस्ट, एंड द टोटल टैक्स इज बीइंग शेयर्ड बाय ऑल थ्री इक्वली. तो टी अगर टैक्स आ रहा है तो टी बाई थ्री तीनों के लिए हो गया. इसका 1/3 हमने सबके ले लिया. नाउ इफ इट इज प्रोवाइडेड इन अ डिसेंट्रलाइज्ड मैनर, तो एट दैट टैक्स क्वांटिटी इज अवेलेबल होनी चाहिए ए में कम और बी के लिए ज्यादा, और सी के लिए ज्यादा और बी के लिए इन बिटवीन. But if it is provided in a centralized manner, all are getting same quantity and that same quantity is this Q. So naturally जो previous diagram में बना रखा था उसके accordingly यहाँ ये area loss का area convert हो जाएगा. So आप further shade कर सकते हो this part. This will be for A and this part will be for B. ये दो अलग अलग एरिया देंगे. ये in fact loss का area convert हो जाएगा because goods are being provided in a सेंट्रलाइज मैनर. ये डायग्राम वही है जो प्रीवियस का डायग्राम है, बट कंबाइन करके वो जैसे ये वाला मार्केट है. बट नॉर्मली जो कंसेप्ट यहाँ पे एक्सप्लेन किया जा रहा है उसके भी अपने अपने ड्रॉबैक है कि वी विल नॉट, आवर डिसीजन टू लिव इन अ पर्टिकुलर एरिया डज नॉट ओनली डिपेंड अपॉन द पब्लिक गुड एंड द टैक्स. इट डिपेंड अपॉन वेयर यू विल गेट द एम्प्लॉयमेंट. So accordingly you will move from one area to the other area. Not necessarily we are always guided by our preference for the public good and the tax. ठीक है, ये पार्ट आप जस्ट एक बार रीड करके रख लेना इन केस इफ इट कम्स विद सी. अगर कोई नए क्वेश्चन आपको मिल जाते हैं बट यू हैव आइदर रेड इट समवेयर, कुछ आइडिया भी अगर होगा देन यू विल बी राइटिंग एट लीस्ट द रेलेवेंट थिंग्स. दैट विल बी इनफ फॉर दिस टाइप ऑफ क्वेश्चंस. Question number 3 is explain the effect of a tax on labor supply decisions. Use suitable diagram. Tax on labor. So it is basically a kind of micro questions more. If tax is imposed on labor, So wage will actually decrease. After tax, wage will decrease because out of that wage, a certain fraction you have to pay in the form of tax. So it will reduce the wage after tax. A reduction of wage will actually change number of working hours. It will change your working hour labor supply, and that change is guided by two things: substitution effect and income effect. What is the substitution effect here? Substitution effect says that as wage will decrease, leisure will become relatively cheaper because wage rate is opportunity cost of leisure. So as wage decreases, leisure will become relatively cheaper. Therefore, person will prefer to have more of leisure and less of work. So due to substitution effect, work will decrease. What is the income effect argument? Income effect argument कह रहा है कि as wage will fall and income will fall. With lower income, person will prefer to have less of all normal goods. Leisure is considered as normal good. So leisure will decrease and work will increase. That means these two effects work in the opposite direction. So when there will be wage taxation, there will be substitution effect, there will be income effect, and they work in the opposite direction. So what is the effect on labor supply? It may increase, it may decrease, and that depend upon whether substitution effect is dominant or income effect is dominant. इसी एक केस को आप डायग्राम में शो कर सकते हो. You can write here leisure, वर्टिकल एक्सेस पे इनकम है, and draw a tangency anywhere. इस डायरेक्शन से लेजर मेजर होता है ना, पूरे डायरेक्शन से वर्क. So if I say that substitution effect is more than income effect, तो substitution effect greater होने पे क्या होना, substitution effect की वजह से work decrease हो रहा है, and we are assuming it to be greater, so work will decrease. So as there will be tax on labor income, this budget constraint line gets flat, because जो भी इनकम था उस इनकम का एक फ्रैक्शन टैक्स के फॉर्मेट चला गया. ओरिजिनल लाइन का स्लोप आ जाएगा वेज, नेक्स्ट लाइन का स्लोप आ जाएगा वेज माइनस टैक्स, and we have to show that substitution effect is greater, therefore tangency you have to take to the right, so that working hour will reduce, work will reduce because substitution effect is greater. और इनकम effect अगर greater लेना है तो इस टेंजेंसी के पॉइंट को आप इसके लेफ्ट साइड दिखा देंगे. नेक्स्ट डायग्राम ड्रॉ करके. So that will be for wage taxation. Then another is compare a proportional tax with a progressive tax that has same effect on utility. और उसे diagrammatically explain करना है. Same effect on the utility, that means we have to keep person on same indifference curve, and we have to compare proportional tax with the progressive. See, the difference between proportional and progressive is that in the case of proportional, tax upon income, ये रेशियो कांस्टेंट रहना है. टैक्स अपॉन इनकम ये रेशियो कांस्टेंट होगा. लाइक 10% ऑफ 10% का हमने टैक्स इंपोज कर लिया, तो इफ दिस इज अ बजट कंस्ट्रेंट, प्रोपोर्शनल के बाद ये लाइन इनफैक्ट फ्लैटर होगी. मतलब जो भी इनकम था उसका एक सर्टेन परसेंटेज हमारा टैक्स जा रहा है. अगेन लेजर इनकम वाला कंसेप्ट लगाना है. प्रोग्रेसिव का आइडिया स्लाइटली डिफरेंट है. प्रोग्रेसिव टैक्सेशन ये कह रहा है कि व्हेन योर इनकम इज जीरो, then government will be giving you some lump sum grant, and as your income increases and it is greater than the critical limit, then you have to pay tax to the government. So if your income is zero, that corner, then from government you will be getting a specific grant. You are getting this grant from the government, and as your income increases, but your income will increase as your leisure will decrease and work will increase. So as your income increases, then you have to pay tax on the difference of your actual income and that critical level of income. So in that case, the budget constraint will be like this. और एक क्रिटिकल इनकम तक, जैसे आप अगर इसको, इफ आई ड्रॉ द ओरिजिनल लाइन, वुड बी लाइक दिस. इस लाइन का मतलब हो गया कि अगर मैं वो इंटरसेक्शन का पॉइंट, इफ आई कंसीडर दैट इंटरसेक्शन पॉइंट एज अ क्रिटिकल, तो करस्पॉन्डिंग टू दैट क्रिटिकल, ये हमारा क्रिटिकल लेवल ऑफ इनकम हो गया. इफ योर इनकम इज मोर देन दैट, देन यू हैव टू पे टैक्स. इफ योर इनकम इज लेस, यू आर रिसीविंग ग्रांट फ्रॉम द गवर्नमेंट. तो इसको कंबाइन करके आपको ये बताना है कि इफ पर्सनल यूटिलिटी विल रिमेन सेम, देन आउट ऑफ दिस टू विच वन इज मोर एफिशिएंट. एफिशिएंसी का मतलब अगेन यहाँ पे आप डेडवेट लॉस से उसको रिलेट करते हैं. यू कैन ड्रॉ द डायग्राम. ओरिजिनल वन विदाउट एनी टैक्सेशन, प्रोपोर्शनल टैक्स के बाद यूज डिफरेंट. आफ्टर प्रोपोर्शनल टैक्स इट इज दिस लाइन, and after quantity tax, sorry, after progressive taxation. Progressive में if your income is 0, you get a grant, and as income increases, grant will get reduced, and after a certain level of income you have to pay tax to the government. Now given that equation, यूटिलिटी आपको सेम रखनी है. सेम यूटिलिटी का मतलब हो गया सेम इंटरफेरेंस का मस्ट बी टेंजेंट ऑन दिस ब्लू लाइन एज वेल एज ऑन दी ग्रीन लाइन. तो सेम इंटरफेरेंस का मस्ट बी टेंजेंट ऑन बोथ. ड्रॉ द टेंजेंसी. अब ब्लू लाइन हमने बना रखा था प्रोपोर्शनल के लिए, तो प्रोपोर्शनल में टेंजेंसी का पॉइंट हो गया एम, गवर्नमेंट का रेवेन्यू एम एन, प्रोग्रेसिव में optimal choice is determined by this point as gap between these two budget revenue budget line will be this. So government revenue will be RS. So clearly when government is imposing proportional tax, government collect more revenue. So rather than imposing proportional, if government imposes progressive, then there will be loss of revenue, and that loss of revenue is termed as the deadweight loss. So from that angle, if you want to keep utility same, it will be better from government point of view, because if consumer की utility तो same है, so it will be better to have a proportional tax rather than a progressive tax. That was question number 4. The last one is वो direct easy question है. What are the canons of public expenditure? Just as just as taxation has different principles, government expenditure also are guided by certain canons, and just like canons of taxation, economists have provided canons of public expenditure also, which should govern public expenditure decision, and they reflect the philosophy of a judicious use of public fund with associated legal propriety. Some of these are in the nature of administrative safeguard, while others are expected to help the economy and society in achieving their diverse objective. So one is the canon of economy, that is judicious use of the resource. Canon of the sanction, it must be sanctioned by a competent authority like parliament. Canon of benefit asserts that every items of expenditure ought to be viewed in the context of its expected benefit, which can take several forms. So you have to basically write down those different canons of surplus, like budget must be having some surplus, we should not be overspending. So those are the basic principles of public expenditure. So generally public canons of public expenditure has not been asked so far, but टैक्स वाले क्वेश्चन पूछे गए कई बार. ठीक है, तो इट कुड बी एज अ पार्ट ऑफ न्यू क्वेश्चन. ठीक है, तो वी हैव टेकन बेसिकली 7 days फॉर मनी बैंकिंग एंड फाइनेंस. इसमें लास्ट 3 days वाज फॉर पब्लिक फाइनेंस. क्लियर? तो नाउ वी हैव कंप्लीटेड माइक्रो डे वाइज क्वेश्चन, मैक्रो 1 week, money and finance 3rd week. Continuing with paper 1, we'll start with the international economics. So I think a week or more than a week time, because weightage वहाँ ज़्यादा है, and more questions are there. It will be divided broadly into two parts. Theories of international trade. So I will be writing only theories of international trade. In that theories, it will be including the Ricardian, HO model, specific standard trade model, new trade theories. So all theories, जैसे syllabus में mentioned है, old and new theories. Then one part is the form of protection जिसमें tariff और quota है, and third section is in fact balance of payment and the adjustment, और वो lengthy topic है वहाँ पे, and it will end with the global institutions. So I think more than a week time for international economic section, and then again I think a week time for growth and development. Out of 60 days, I think 15 to 20 days will be good enough for paper 2, and about 35-40 days you need for paper 1. So next topic will be moving to international economics. Thank you.